This conference will now be recorded.
Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. We've got 3 topics on the work session. We'll start with the public health update. And I believe we have Margot, although I'm not seeing her. I know that we will have Margot joining us, correct?
Chair Quayla, members of the board. Yeah, if Margot is going to be on, and so what I might suggest is we can go to the second item and she'll join us and give us the update. Okay,
we'll do. Next item is the comprehensive plan update, draft 5, background report and policy questions. We've got 30 minutes allotted for this. This is on page 3 of our packet, and I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioners. Again, for the record, I'm Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. And tonight we're going to be talking about Goal 5. And so in my 30 minutes, I'm going to summarize everything that we have done in the past 6 months, which is how long it took our citizen advisory committees to work through this material. Goal 5 is actually very complex. It's very broad. It covers a lot of topics. And because we all like a visual aid, Goal 5 is one whole volume in our 5-volume comprehensive plan set. So it's a collector's item. Be on the lookout for it in the future once we're done with this process. What we really do want to talk about tonight, though, is Goal 5 covers a huge array of resources. There are 12 required inventories that the county has to look at. Those include riparian corridors, wildlife habitat, federal wild and scenic rivers, groundwater resources, Oregon recreation trails, natural areas, wilderness areas, mineral and aggregate resources, energy sources, and cultural areas. And there's also 3 additional resource areas that the state recommends we inventory, but it's not mandatory. And those include historic resources, open spaces, and scenic views and sites. So out of those 15 resources that we're either required or strongly encouraged to look at, all but one of them, the federal wild and scenic rivers, are included in Clatsop County. So we have a very rich and diverse county and a lot of material to cover. So to give a little background on Goal 5, when the county first developed our Goal 5, wonderful volume here, what happened was a process that was locally controlled and locally centered. And our citizen advisory committees back in the late 1970s worked to identify areas and resources that were important to the local communities. So for example, in historic resources, they identified things like the Westport Log Tunnel, the Pioneer Cemetery, and under scenic views and sites, they identified Napa Gorge as an area of local importance. And then once we got through that process, back in the day with these locally important resources that we've identified, what happened next was you take a look at the land use that surrounds that resource, and you look at the potential uses that could be put on those properties or maybe already existed on those properties, and then you do an analysis to figure out if those proposed uses are going to conflict with the resource you've just identified as being locally important. Once you've gone through those 2 steps in the process, then the county decides a level of protection that they want to put on these important resources that are being included in the inventory. And then the final step is you create your zoning regulations and your development standards to enact those protection policies. And the reason I have just spent some time explaining all this is because it's an important part of how Goal 5 operates and how you identify your resources that are in Goal 5. And it's called an Economic, Social, Environmental Energy Valuation, ESEE or EC. And so when we have our discussions about Goal 5, you'll hear that EC term a lot. And it's really basically a convoluted way of saying, find out what's important to you, figure out what you need to do to protect it, and then put your protections in place to protect that. So going on from there, when you look at the agenda package tonight, you'll see that kind of working off that original 1970s concept, our citizen advisory committees did identify several additional resources that they felt should go through that EC process to determine whether they should be included in the inventory that spans over the next 20 years. And they've made recommendations on many of the different resources, particularly historic resources. There was a lot of interest in that. Some of the scenic and natural areas as well, where people have identified additional places that may be worthy of protection under the county's regulations. So I want to be able to have a lot of questions and discussion with you this evening in our 30 minutes. So my presentation is going to be kept pretty short. I will say, just from my personal perspective, now that I'm 2/3 of the way into this process, as we all are, if I were to do this over again, I would probably start with goal 5, because goal 5 is really the foundational goal where we could begin a discussion about what is important in the county and what our county priorities are, because that's really what goal 5 is all about, identifying what's locally important to the people who live and work here and operate businesses here. So that's just my personal perspective, my 2 cents, and I'm happy to give you change on that if you feel that you've been cheated on your 2 cents. But really, I'm here tonight to answer your questions and just help walk you through goal 5, because it is really a lot to take in. So thank you.
Commissioner Toyoka.
Good evening, everyone. As far as goal 5, I think it's it is a huge area of scope that it undertakes. And what you publish probably scratches the surface, is you can do more research and there's more information available. The one thing I think we need to do is go into a little more depth with this, because if you research some of the items, especially, like your issue 1 with the safe harbor methodology, I think in terms of Clatsop County, and you look at some of the studies, the delineations from the 80s, we're looking at 40-year-old studies. And if you read studies from wetland biologists, wetlands are a living life cycle. They have a life cycle of their own. So the data from the 80s is not necessarily true in 2021. So that methodology could be, fraught with a lot of issues if we went forward with that methodology at this point. And like another was the Arch Cape local wetlands, and they've already identified discrepancies. So I don't think as a board we'd be responsible to try to push something forward when it's known discrepancies are listed. And then if you get into the text, there's a lot of different items where I think we have to have a lot more discussion, a lot more impactful. No single issue stands alone. How wetlands, how riparian areas, how everything is handled interacts with each other. And I think some of this handles them singularly and not how they interact. And I do think we, with that, especially that safe harbor, I know City of Warrenton has some experience with it, and it was fraught with trouble. So that's why I think I would like to see if we could table this and have more time with staff and you, Gail, to discuss more of these issues in depth before we come back to a public forum. I think as a commission, we need to have a better platform, a better knowledge base, and a better format before we come back to a public forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I can speak to City of Warrenton since I remember them starting the process 20 years ago, and I think it was about 3 years it took to get through goal 5 in Warrenton. And I don't think anybody was happy with the result when it was over, but it was a really, really challenging endeavor. Commissioner Webb, you had your hand up?
Yes. The previous board, as we started to go through the comp plan process, felt so strongly about our lack of critical information that it actually put in the board strategic plan a program to address infrastructure and environmental issues that is part of our work plan right now. And Director Henriksen and I have already met to talk about what that program would look like. And I think that she mentions in the staff report here that CREST is doing some work with us. It's wetlands, right, Gail?
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
Right. And we constantly, in discussions during this process, ran into the issue that we just didn't have the data. We just didn't have the information that we needed to have. And I agree with Commissioner Toyoka resoundingly that anything that relates to the environment from 1980 is irrelevant, immaterial, and not usable 40 years later. And so I think Gail is already beginning to do some of the things. I noticed in her report, Gail, that you've talked about doing a GIS process where we put water systems and watersheds, I think we were looking for, to integrate into our GIS system. We felt in our strategic planning process that it was very important for us to get a handle on our natural resources, that especially related to our infrastructure. And of course, the biggest of these is water. We don't really have a we don't really have a good feel for what the service level is for the entities and their different sorts that provide water throughout the county. And this was an issue that I have always felt we needed to have the cities integrated with, especially, well, I think all of them, it's relevant because they all have UGBs to maintain. And somewhere in this comp plan, we're going to have to start dealing with potential growth areas within the county. And I think that especially climate change needs to be a really important part of our considerations in Goal 5, because so many of these issues are going to change under climate. You know, who knows what our wetlands are going to look like after the significant ocean rise that we're expecting. And they change. Commissioner Toyoka is absolutely correct that wetlands are a changing dynamic in our environment anyway. But we really need to get a handle on both freshwater and also seawater, and what we're going to do with solid waste and human waste, which relates directly to water. So in the comp plans that I've been involved with in the past, these sorts of things have been largely delegated to professional consultants because they're science. You know, we need to know the science of it. So I certainly wouldn't be opposed to some kind of a maybe letting our strategic plan component begin to implement some of this this knowledge that we lack, and so that we just have a better understanding of what the environmental issues are in the county, and I mean environmental in the very broadest sense. So that's my input. I think that I almost wish I've never really agreed with Goal 5, because I think that there are issues in it that are environmental and often largely out of reach, not within the purview or the ability of local governments to address. But I think the cultural elements, the historic and other cultural elements, I wish there were a separate goal, because they're different. And I think that it was indicative, in fact, of the discussions that went on with the advisory groups about their preferences for the more cultural and historic amenities. That's where, at least the meetings I attended, that was a heavy interest of theirs. So I guess I'm suggesting that I think it might be a good idea to table Goal 5 and let the work of the strategic plan proceed, so that we can get our scientific understanding to be a bit more robust as we pursue these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. I have to agree with you as well. I think it is beyond the resources of county governments, city governments often to do some of these huge studies in order to determine the nature of properties, and you ultimately end up making some very distinctive land use decisions in the end. And I know that in Warrenton, that is used, the wetland inventory is used to date, and it can be very punitive to properties that were placed within it. I know a lot of property owners have to deal with that now, and the work was frankly incomplete, and they were dealing with an inaccurate set of data and facts to begin with. So Commissioner Webb's correct. I mean, it takes a lot of work in order to have something that you can implement and comply with in Goal 5. Anyway, I saw that Commissioner Banks, did you have your hand up? Commissioner Banks.
So I agree with Commissioner Toyoka on, taking some time to go through this goal, potentially one-on-one with Gail, Monica, and Dawn as commissioners. I'm not really willing to table it because I feel like then it's not going to get done, or it's going to be pushed off even further down the road. I feel like, this is an item that is in front of us that needs to be completed. I do have to say that in regards to knowledge and specialists and professionals in regards to each of these topics, we have state agencies that oversee each of these topics, and I really feel like we as a county can lean on those state agencies and their expertise, because that is their job. And so as we dive through Goal 5, because I'm really not willing to effectively table it, but as we dive through it, that we always remain aware that we have the overhead umbrella of our state agencies. They are the experts. Let's lean upon their decisions. Let's not implement anything extra above and beyond what they've already outlined, because they are the professionals. In the topic at hand, we have DSL, we have Dogami, we have a whole slew of state agents, ODF and W, a whole slew of agencies in Goal 5 that I feel like, that we should just be following their lead. But on the other hand, it's up to us as a group. I'm up for one-on-ones with Gail, Dawn, and Monica, each individually as a commissioner, going through our concerns and then coming back together with a revised version or a revised discussion, because page 17 alone is probably going to take me 20 to 30 minutes, just because there's so many potential pitfalls. Not that I'm ever stating that there's anything wrong. It's just that there's a lot of verbiage in there that I feel like needs to be addressed. And following John's comment regarding safe harbor, it reads as if that would set aside more land and increase costs for our private landowners. This needs a further discussion, in my personal opinion. And then when I have a comment within this that says recent DSL approved delineations for privately owned parcels in this area have revealed discrepancies from a study that wants to be entered into our plan, I feel like anything with a discrepancy is a red flag. and I can't knowingly support something being added to our county document that's false and has newer information. And so, I mean, that's where I stand. Like we can dive through this page by page like we did goals 1 through 4, or we can do as John suggested or Commissioner Toyoka suggested. I'll leave it up to the purview of the rest of us.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm reminded of the phrase complex, interactive, adaptive systems. Here we have the environment, here we have the economy, here we have the culture. We're looking for comprehensive, accurate data. The only issue is the data keep changing. How do we establish a process that accommodates data that keep changing, and we need to apply reasonable standards so that there is certainty for business, there is certainty for some economic costs and benefits, and there is some certainty for improvement in the challenges we face with our climate. I don't want to table it, but if I can use a car metaphor, if we can drop into a lower gear and proceed through this slowly, because this is some stiff stuff to go through. So I like that we're talking about, we want data-informed discussions. We want comprehensive plans. AOC, for example, is Commissioner Magruder, our next door neighbor, is working to get a water inventory. And there are statewide models at AOC as well as with the state agencies to support the commissioners as we look to have sound public policy that meets the needs of the people and meets the needs of the place. So I like the way we're thinking about this. I like the idea of one-on-ones so that we can explore our individual perceptions and concerns. We're blessed with a staff that's capable of responding to that. We're blessed to have each other because we're doing the good work in the best possible way. So colleagues, thank you tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Bangs.
I just wanted to bring up one other thing that's been really bugging me about a lot of the verbiage that I've read within this goal is staff capacity and cost. When we're committing ourselves to a lot of these statements, or potentially committing ourselves to a lot of these statements, I automatically revert to, do we have the staff capacity and how much is that going to cost? Because I'm not willing to trade funding off of another, county supported service. And so that's the other thing that I go into this and reading a lot of this verbiage. I think of our capacity and how much do some of these thought processes or these ideals or ideas, how much that's going to cost, not only to us as a county, but also to our constituents.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb.
Yep, I can assure my fellow commissioners that actually the efforts that I was talking about that we had put into the strategic plan are already in the community development work plan. And so, as I say, Director Henriksen and I have already actually started working on some of them. So, we're kind of doing, it's a work in progress. The board last year at this time, when we were doing our strategic planning, it was already very clear in the comp plan process that we lacked a lot of scientific information that we needed to make some of these decisions. We kept going with our CACs, so I think we owe it a bit to them to consider what all the hard work and the recommendations that they have made. Commissioner Banks has raised an issue that that I think I would like to bring up right now. In the meeting, it was a week or two ago, where Commissioner Thompson and I, neither of us were present. There was the statement made about the issue of citizen participation, and I think it was you, Commissioner Banks, I don't want to misquote you, but who said that you seem to feel that you wanted to interject your input sort of at the beginning of the process. I think that the heart and soul of SB 100 is that goal 1 is starting with our citizens, that it defiles the program to have a leader say, well, I believe in citizen participation, but I want you to know from the get-go that this is how I feel about this issue. The issue of citizen participation for a leader is one of listening. It's one of not having preordained opinions, and listening to our citizens talk to us and give us their input and their perspective. And I have to tell you that the issue of the commissioners meeting individually with staff is something that I think I'm going to begin to object to. I think that the work sessions that we have are, first of all, they don't include the public. And secondly, it appears to me on many occasions, both work sessions and meetings, that a decision has been made about things that I have never discussed with any other or others commissioners. And I don't feel that I need to meet individually with staff and let them know my preordained opinions, because without citizen input, I have no opinion. And I think that in our discussion with the Planning Commission the other day about talking about biases, et cetera, I think that's something that is intrinsic to leadership, is listening first from our citizens, not just having them respond to our wishes, but to having our citizens talk to us. And then we can collectively make some judgments about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. I don't want to speak for Commissioner Bangs, but I know each one of us as a commissioner meets individually with our county manager. We often talk about issues of importance at that period of time. There might be opportunities for a staff member to be a part of that to better inform us of what's going on, but I don't think it replaces our role as representatives to listen to the public as well. So these are all part of the process, and certainly it's been I think a very successful one, the way that we've implemented over the last couple of years, and our individual meetings have been with the county manager. I see Commissioner Bangs has her hand up.
So I have to admit, it really sucks to have my internet cut out when I'm being reamed. But I will have to say that when I was discussing my involvement of the CACs, it was prior to my election. It was when I was a community member. It was before 2021. It was before I ran. It was actually one of the reasons why I ran. And so when I'm actually kind of frustrated that someone decided to call me out on a rumor in a public meeting without all the facts. And had you been present at the meeting with the other two commissioners, you would have heard that story. And maybe I wasn't clear in that original meeting, and I'm sorry that I was not clear at that original meeting, because I agree with you. I would not want to interject my thought process as an elected official in the beginning of a community engagement. But when I was simply trying to engage, I wasn't allowed to. And so, or I should say I was allowed to, but my voice didn't make it to any level of this goal comprehensive plan. And so again, man, I'm actually pretty sad that you decided to come at me at that direction. But anyhow, that's beside the point. Water under the bridge. I don't know what was said between the time that I cut off, other than that you were in the middle of reaming me a new one. And on a side note, I did catch a little bit about those one-on-one meetings, and I will express a little bit of maybe frustration of all of the meetings that you keep referring to between yourself and Gail that I haven't been privy to, and that I don't know what's so you know, one-on-one meetings with staff. I don't know.
If I can bring it
think
back
they've been
to,
productive.
can I bring it back to what the topic is, which is goal 5, and what we're talking about is the process going forward. I think that it is important to get some more information. I would like to hear from consultants that actually do this work a lot. I know that Crest does this work, and I would also like to bring in a couple other voices maybe that do a lot of wetland consulting work in the area, because I know the standards have changed over a period of time. Obviously, we're talking 40 years for what this wetland inventory currently that we're using is, but also the standards have changed quite a bit. What they use as indicators of wetlands have changed, and we have a lot different environment here with soils and vegetation than much of the state of Oregon. And so I do think we need to be careful of getting a cookie cutter approach to Northwest Oregon because we have a different environment in Northwest Oregon, frankly, and we do have levied properties that, you know, used to be estuary. They aren't anymore. You have cities in some of them. So there are some things that are unique, and it's important to kind of get a variety, I think, of opinions as we're kind of getting our arms around, which is, like Gail, I think, characterized as one of the most challenging things that we can possibly try to tackle, which is goal 5. So yeah, I would welcome further discussions. Having another work session, I think, would be very helpful, and maybe, you know, maybe delving into exactly what the process and research would be necessary so that we can make some of these determinations. Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you. And I would like to encourage us to have some, you know, meetings with county manager, assistant county manager, you know, and the director Hendrickson, because I think it'd be more expeditious for the staff. Because on this one alone, I've got notes and notes and notes on every page. And I think it would be much kinder to the staff if we can let them assimilate our questions, and then, you know, from all 5 different commissioners. And then before we meet again, they can have all that information assimilated and come back with one consolidated answer. Because maybe some of us have the same questions, same, you know, concerns on certain line items. I think it would be much kinder to staff to do it that way. And I would appreciate that opportunity to, you know, ask questions and have iteration about certain line items, you know, some clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Any other comments? So Gail, what kind of, what have you kind of gathered this discussion? What can we boil it down to? What's our next steps?
I will work with the county manager. We'll schedule, probably it'll be a series of goal 5 work sessions moving forward, just because the material is very complex, and I'm sure the county manager may have something to add as well.
Chair Quayle, member of the board. I think Gail's right. It's going to take a series of work sessions, which we will prepare for. But I also believe that the one-on-ones between the board and staff are really intended so that staff can really collect the information and to be as pointed in our delivery for those issues that have been raised by the board. And so I think that having follow-up meetings so that we can understand what your questions are would just help facilitate this. You know, as we all know, work session time is very precious, and just the amount of time that it's going to require from the board to get through the comprehensive plan. So in just trying to be practical and also sensitive at the same time, I think that doing some of that legwork up front will just help us deliver what the board needs. So we will follow up. I will follow up with each of you in our regular meetings, and we can just chart that path.
Thank you, County Manager. Commissioner Webb.
I would like to once again express my discomfort with that kind of process. We are a collegial body. I would like to hear what every other commissioner has to say. I don't think it's at all, I just don't think it's right. I think that our citizens deserve to hear us discuss things and to ask questions. There's an awful lot of technical work in here. I understand that. I mean, I'm not a hydrologist. You know, I'm not an expert on wetlands. And I guess I haven't marked up as much because I was involved in this process with several of the CACs. But I object to the issue that we can't talk with each other collaboratively about how we feel about issues. I think that our citizens deserve that. I think they deserve to hear what our perspective is on given issues, not to have a private meeting with staff and then have we send out the staff to interpret all those things for us. No, I'm sorry. I think that's completely undemocratic. There have been, you know, I think we need to vote on things. I think we need to be able to put our positions out publicly. I'm all for meeting once a week with the county manager, including any other staff he wants to bring in, because there are specific issues to be worked on. My meetings with Gail have been pursuant to what is in our strategic plan at the full knowledge of Don Boone, because I considered that to be an assignment that I needed to work on. But in terms of our personal feelings about contentious issues like this, I think we should do that publicly. I don't think we should do that behind the county manager's door. I think it's undemocratic, and I don't think it's fair to our constituents not to know what our questions, concerns, and opinions are on things. I don't approve, and I think we've done far too much of that in the last 8 months. And I have constituents who are real concerned about the fact that we have work sessions, and because legally we can't decide anything in a work session, then we go to board meetings and somehow the decision has been made and we vote or whatever. And as I say, I just don't find that a good way to run a democracy.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. I would take issue on the fact that things are decided before we go to board meeting. We have work sessions. I think people do provide comment and discussion, and I think it's good discussion. And I gain a lot from hearing your point of view and other commissioners' point of view through these work sessions. We all have the opportunity to also meet with the county manager. I think that's beneficial as well. I think that the process has been a sound one. And when we have the opportunity to have a board meeting, I don't think anybody's feels uncomfortable sharing their opinion. I hope not. I hope that isn't something that folks are reticent to do. I think that most everybody does say how they feel, and I hope that continues to be the process. I don't share the same experience as you do, Commissioner Webb. I think that we do try to have good discussion. Work sessions are not for votes. Work sessions are just informative, and then we have a board meeting, and hopefully, we can come to a decision that incorporates, a free exchange of ideas, and everybody has an opportunity to say something and share their opinion. I know I had a couple hands up though. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I'm going to try and be circumspect because my experience on the board of 6.5 years, we now have a respectful civil discourse. We have informed through our relationship with staff. We can work out questions that we have so that we can be better commissioners. We can be more respectful of each other, of ourselves, of the staff, and of the public. I have sat through some extremely miserable, extremely uncivil, extremely long board meetings. I am thankful every time we come together in our work sessions so that the public can hear us work together, because that's what we're doing. I understand that other people may have the perception that they are not being included. I would say, on the contrary, there was much more decision making going on behind closed doors, and not all of it was part of the public process. So I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we're doing well. Commissioner Webb, if there's any way that I can reassure you, I would like to do that. If there are constituents, perhaps they don't feel as influential as they used to feel in their direct interpersonal relationships. I don't know. Sometimes that's been known to happen in other circumstances. I don't know if that applies right now. I respect your opinion. I value your input. I want you to have a process that you're comfortable with. I personally am comfortable with this process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks?
And I think in regards to transparency and so forth, I think that already our commission has displayed, especially during our last goals meeting, that, sharing our thoughts and opinions in an open forum isn't a concern for any of us. Like, we're fairly open with our thoughts, our ideas, and our questions. And, I think my only motive is to expedite this process and move through it so that we can move on to other things. And in doing so, I wouldn't care one way or another if all of my notes that I submit to the county are for the perusal of the public. All of my notes were perusal for the public at our last work session. And so there's no hidden agenda, and there's no thought process to try to hide things from our public. And I think that anybody who spends any time with me has already figured that out, that I kind of live life out loud. And so on that note, I would have no problem with notes being taken and shared of these particular meetings if we have them. I don't know. I just, transparency, it's a big deal to me. I understand it.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. I do want to wrap this up because we have 15 minutes left in the work session. We have a public health update, which is very important to get to tonight. So I want to, at this time, close this discussion and move right to our public health update and our public health director, Margot Lalich.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair Quayla. Quick update for you. As I mentioned to you last time, really we were focusing on containment of the community spread, and at this point in time, it's really just about management and shifting our priorities based upon the resources we have in terms of human resources as well as material resources. Just looking at the data today, the state's database system is really overwhelmed with all the activity. So there are times when we're just not able to access it, pull data in a timely manner, or enter that data. Today we had 40 cases, which is more, again, it's in that higher number than we're used to seeing in our county. But you must understand that we're doing a lot of testing. And so when we actually look at the number of tests we're conducting, for example, public health alone today conducted 70 tests, and then you add in the other tests being performed by our hospitals and providers. For us alone, out of those 70 tests, only 9 were positive. That's very encouraging. It doesn't mean they couldn't convert and end up positive tomorrow, but what we're seeing, and one of our big focuses right now, is on the appropriate use of testing. So I'm going to speak to that in a few moments. We have 15 outbreaks at this time. It's a lot for Clatsop County, but it's not unique to Clatsop County. Those outbreaks are multi-sector. We're seeing it in the clinical setting. We're seeing it in congregate living. We're seeing it in long-term care facilities, as well as that sporadic spread. While it seems concerning if we just focus on the number, it is not surprising knowing that we opened up on June 30th. There have been some significant events and gathering in the community, and it's been a perfect opportunity for the virus to spread. And again, I want to emphasize that we are not alone, we're not unique. And obviously today with the governor's announcement, we're moving back to masking indoors, which I wholeheartedly support, and I never stopped masking indoors. I don't have the hospitalization data for today. Again, we can get that data in real time. It gets updated based upon how well the databases are functioning right now. Every 24 hours, I do collect that data every Friday, and a look back from Saturday to Friday, and we're reporting this information on Friday. We're interested in the hospitalizations as well as the percentage and number of those who are not vaccinated. Still focusing on 3 priority areas: the testing, vaccination, case investigation, contact tracing, and outbreak management. I'm going to work backwards on this. At one point in time, testing was the priority, and particularly before we had vaccines, right? We wanted to know how many people were infected with what they also call the ancestral virus, right? It's had many mutations since then. And it was before we had vaccine, and we're learning so much more about the efficacy of the vaccine. Testing is less of a priority now, and it's becoming quite a challenge. We're doing hundreds of tests a day in our community. Some individuals prefer to use testing as a way of monitoring their status versus getting vaccinated. It's overwhelming the system, not just here, but in other places. There is, for some, an inappropriate use of testing, as well as the fact that we know enough about the communicability of the COVID virus that testing isn't always indicated. We now know whether or not somebody is vaccinated or not. If they have been in contact with a positive case and they start developing symptoms, it's very likely that they are infected with the virus and that they should isolate or quarantine. There's good evidence to support those recommendations. In addition to that, we have a supply chain issue at this point in time as well. We can do rapid tests, but getting the testing kits for our PCR testing is becoming more of a challenge. We're working very closely with our hospital colleagues, in particular CMH, to make sure that they have the supplies they need to do the most appropriate testing for the patients that they're seeing. But there is a back order, and some of those supplies are going on an allocation basis. So it's likely we will move towards rapid testing in the future, as well as screening individuals and using that opportunity during screening to really discern whether or not getting a test at that given point in time is appropriate. Vaccinations are absolute priority because we know that's most protective, right? If people are vaccinated, even though we're having these breakthrough cases, those who are vaccinated are experiencing less severe symptoms as well as hospitalization. And when we look at what's happening in the hospitals, and it's not just COVID related, but as we're seeing, we're in the worst that we've ever been in Oregon right now during the pandemic in terms of utilization of hospitals and health systems. We are vaccinating, and we have our pop-up clinics, we have our outreach clinics, we have many vaccine providers in the community. We will continue to promote that as our first priority. For us, our second priority, again, is that outbreak management, case investigation, contact tracing. And I believe I mentioned before, I've been working towards setting up a standalone operation similar to our PIC that will provide that element of support in the very near future. It's not something you can launch overnight. It takes a particular type of staffing. It requires a certain level of training, which is already in place, and we're getting those in our volunteer pool who are qualified to be doing this work trained in the next 2 weeks. Our colleagues in different departments have been fabulous in helping us set this up quickly. Our PIC is really critical. It provides up-to-date, current, relevant information, and again, we stood down, we relocated it based upon the needs of the community at the time. It's getting much busier, and it will get even busier as we start absorbing some of those important calls that have, quite frankly, become an undue burden for our health systems, and they actually shouldn't be triaging those calls. They should be coming to public health. So we're working together in a very supportive way to finalize that transition, and also preparing the PIC to be able to respond to all of the needs of parents and staff and their concerns as school resumes very, very soon. I'm trying to think. You often have questions about breakthrough cases. The state is updating its biweekly report, so I can't pull it. It's a PDF document. It's not a dashboard. I'm not able to pull it off of the website right now. I think they're correcting some of the data. But in what would have been reported and hopefully published in the next couple of days, only 10 of the deaths in July were in vaccinated individuals. 45 of the deaths, COVID-related deaths, were unvaccinated. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm looking to see if I missed anything in general. Again, continue to work with our partners. I just got off a call with Tillamook to see how we could leverage support for one another in terms of outbreak management, and the Oregon Health Authority continues to support us as well as so many communities during this very challenging time. Yes?
Thank you, Margot. We have a couple questions. I think Commissioner Bangs had her hand up first, and then Commissioner Webb.
Are we hosting any walk-in testing any longer? I'm sorry, my internet's horrible tonight, so I didn't know if you mentioned that yet.
Yes, we are. We continue to host 2 events a week, one in Seaside. We just had one today, we did 70 tests in 3 hours, which is a lot. It's a drive-through. And then we are also partnering with the Barbie Center, and we will be doing testing there as well. We are scheduling testing based upon availability of supplies and again, resources. And I'm looking into seeing if we can't contract with some external sources who may be able to visit the county and do testing. We had a partnership, as you know, with OHSU, but they're focusing their resources on testing and back to school right now, which is very appropriate.
So just a follow-up, is it by appointment or are there walk-in appointments available?
Thank you for asking that question again. So it has been walk-in. We are actually going back to appointments for 2 reasons. One, it gives us an opportunity when people call to schedule that appointment, which will happen through our PIC, to really discern whether or not they're appropriate for testing. We want to be able to test those most at risk and those most vulnerable. We do not want to be testing those who are frequently showing up just for screening because they do not want to get vaccinated. Right now, with our shortage of resources, that's not an appropriate use. And so we will be going to scheduling starting next week. This Friday will be our last unscheduled just drive-through appointments or drive-through testing.
Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, Margot, could you explain the difference between the two kinds of tests?
Right. So as much as I can without going into fine detail, but PCR testing is a more definitive way of testing, and we use it very specifically right now, not for routine testing, and it has to do with specificity, as well as some other criteria, and we use it for travel testing because it provides its specificity and validity, and it's a very valid test. So when we are able to show somebody had a PCR test, it's really indicative that yes, they are positive. Also, we use it for asymptomatic.
Could I stop you for what was the acronym that you just used for that test?
A PCR is I'm sorry, I'll have to grab that for you.
No, that's fine. I just didn't hear it correctly.
I actually know it, but it's just like it's not there because I'm thinking about the answers to your questions.
Polymerase chain reaction.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And so we use it for travel. We also use it for asymptomatic cases. So individuals who present with symptoms, we would use the rapid test because it's a valid and a quicker test. The PCR testing is also being used and reserved for individuals who need preoperative testing as well. Because we want to find out their status before they go and have procedures. At our testing sites, OHA has a very, very good infographic, and I recently asked them if they were planning to update it, but the information's still current, that explains what to do with your test results and if it's positive or negative, and why you would be doing one test versus another test. And I'm more than happy to share that link with you or all of you if that's something you're interested in seeing, but we hand that out at every one of our testing sites, as well as asking individuals whether or not they're vaccinated. As I've shared before, whether many want to get tested, but they still don't want to get vaccinated.
Any other questions? I just wanted to, again, reiterate our support for our public health department and for the work you're doing, Margot. And I know that you're doing outreach with the hospitals. The hospitals stand in solidarity with what public health is experiencing. And certainly I can testify to what's happening here at the hospital. We have patients hospitalized. Most of them are unvaccinated. And if they are severe illness or severe symptoms, we can't transfer them to Portland because Portland hospitals are full. So it's a very, very serious situation, and it's it's the worst that I've seen since the pandemic started. So we're in for a challenging month, and I hope that we all can kind of communicate out to our friends, family, and others to get vaccinated and take this seriously. Do what you can with social distancing, masking in the interim. Margot?
Yeah, because I do get questions about the schools, to let you know that we are in the process of scheduling back to school COVID vaccinations with the superintendents. So that is in process for each of the districts that want to host clinics for their students who are eligible.
I saw Commissioner Webb, you had your hand up. Nope. Okay.
Margot just answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Margot, for that update, and thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
We have exhausted our time in the work session. We have one more item, which is the beach access issue. Can we make that a presentation in our regular meeting, Dawn?
Yes, Ted is here, and so I think he is available if you would like to do that.
If the commission agrees, we could put the beach access item right after the agenda approval, if folks feel comfortable with that. Is that okay?
Are we going to need a motion for that in the meeting?
I think we can just announce it when we're talking about the agenda and
Okay.
There won't be a motion. Will just be a presentation.
okay.
You will need a motion to, once we do the amended agenda. That
Okay.
motion.
Okay. We will go ahead and close the work session, and it is 6 o'clock, so we'll roll right into the regular meeting. The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. Can I have the roll call, Teresa?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson,
Here.
Commissioner Toyoka,
Here?
Commissioner Webb,
Here.
Commissioner Banks.
Here.
Okay, we have an agenda and we have an item that we want to add to the agenda, which will be the beach access presentation. Can we make a motion to add that to our agenda? And approve it?
Mr.
Well,
Chair.
I move to, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll say I move to add beach access presentation to our regular meeting agenda.
And I'd second that motion.
Moved and seconded to add the beach access discussion to our regular agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. And I think we still need a motion to approve the agenda, don't we?
So let's move to approve the amended agenda then, please.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the amended agenda. All those in favor signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, carries. So we'll go ahead and have Ted come on and present the beach access item carried over from our work session. And I'll turn it over to Ted, our Public Works Director.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So recently we've had several requests concerning the safety and accessibility and signage of our beach access areas in the Arch Cape Falcon Cove area. And so we don't physically maintain all of these access points. We do maintain, or we try to help emergency services in their access to the beach. And so that's on the 28th, we met with the fire chief and state parks. And if I can, let's see here, I'll screen share here. Let's see, monitor two. Everybody see that? Okay.
We can see it.
Okay. So I wanted to show you this because it not only a visual, but I have kind of a time range that we can look at to see what these facilities, these access points look like. So the first one we looked at with the fire chief and state parks was an improvement to be made on Leech Lane in Arch Cape. So you can see Arch Cape here, Leech Lane down at the end here. And the concern is in these areas is this large cobble, and they can't get through it with their vehicles. And so let's see if I kind of give you a different view here of what this looks like. So we agreed with the fire chief and state parks to remove this cobble or just sweep it to the side, and we'll put a road in here that a rock that will stand up to weather a little better. We'll still have to be doing some maintenance on that, but it will stand up a little better. So that's the first one that we looked at to improve the area for emergency services. And then we have other access points in the Falcon Cove area. The first one is here at Clatsop off of Ray Brown Road, and we'll hone in on that. And you can see this picture here was taken in 2014, and the trails are pretty good. So I can bring this up to 16, still pretty good. And then recent, the trails have eroded a little bit and grown over a little bit more. So we're working with the fire chief. They're going to do some brush control here. And then we're going to try to improve access here for the public, in that they park their cars here, and usually you can only get 1 or 2 vehicles in there. And then some people are actually parking in the road. So that blocks it for emergency services. So there's a piece of property here right now that you can see that they're clearing the property. Our right of way comes clear over here next to this hedge you see right here. So we can use our public road fund and make an improvement there for parking, and then sign it up better so that people can make sure they're not parking in for emergency access. And again, the trail here looks pretty good. So then the next access point is down here, right here. And this is at the intersection of Tide Road and can't remember the name of the street here, Reinhold, or I think is what it's called, something like that. So in this access point, if I go back in my pictures, you can see clearly the trail. And you can see where there was a walkway here, and then there is a set of stairs here. Well, over the years, and especially in these last tides, that changed. See, this is in 2016. They moved the stairs over to another point because of erosion. And now today, we go all the way up, you get in close. There is a set of stairs there, but they're not built to any codes or specifications. It's not safe. It's very narrow. It's not ADA accessible. It's even dangerous really for the fire chief, even though fire chief would use those stairs if he needed to get down to the beach, which he has used them. Someone, I think, had an accident down here and broke their leg, and I think they brought him up through there. But these are a set of stairs that aren't maintained by the county. And it's really nothing that we want to have jurisdiction over, because there's certainly a lot of liability there with something like that and these stairwells. And then also, when you see this much erosion taking place, anything that you put in there is eventually going to be damaged. And so again, the fire chief would like to see better access there, but I don't think it's feasible. And then at this point here is at Columbia. And this access point is really quite dangerous. So if I go in close here, you can see how much erosion has taken place on all these properties here, along with all through here. And now it's just from the trail comes down here, and it's just a drop off. So that's a safety concern that we have. And if I look back again at what this looked like in 2014, you can see the trail. And now that's all gone because of erosion. And really, when you look at this, there's a big safety concern. We do have a sign up, I think I put it in your packet, and it says danger, cliff edge ahead. And it really needs to be a much larger sign, or possibly just blocking that area off for public access, because these king tides are just going to continue to erode these areas, and it's not something that we could maintain. And the fire chief realized this as well at this point, that we really need to block this off for safety, or at least improve the signage. So those are the areas that we looked at, that we have concern over, that the fire chief has concern over. And we do maintain the right of way for public access, but we don't physically maintain all these access points. We do these specific ones for emergency services. Any questions?
Thank you, Ted. I see Commissioner Thompson has her hand up.
Well, I'm so grateful to the county road manager for coming down and examining this, because it's really pretty scary. As he says, in the last few years, the erosion, it's extremely active geologically. That gray stuff is cobbles that are, you know, the size of an ostrich egg to the size of a hummingbird egg. And they're, it's very musical because the wind and the water move them and you can listen to the song. But if you're trying to climb on them, it's precarious. As Reba Owen has pointed out, we have people who want to come down and do beach fires above the high tide line, which is illegal and presents a fire danger. It's also some air quality issues too. So we want to keep our public servants safe. We want to encourage members of the public to stay safe. What do we, yeah, you see all that driftwood? People think that that's a wonderful supply of free burning material, but the sparks fly up and the embers continue. So that's why the rule says no fires above the high tide line. People cheerfully ignore that. So what do we do about this is good as far as it goes. This is extremely useful, helpful information. What do we do about the people who ignored their safety and ours by climbing down there, however they get there, and building fires? What do we do about them? And that's not, I don't think that's Ted's question to answer, but I think it's the question that's still before us. But this is a very good start, again, to present complete and accurate data. Thank you for the pictures and especially the progression through time.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
I will express my support for larger signage for that cliff edge ahead. I feel like that signage should be larger than the yellow arrows. I'm sorry. You know, we're thinking of children and of families and of all ages. And so something a little bit more blatant than that would probably be appreciated, not only for emergency service response, but also for the person that potentially falls off the edge. And then on a second note, I fully support you guys going out there and investigating this and then also improving it, because, you know, frankly, it would be devastating if a parent or a child was going down those stairs and then got, you know, horribly injured, let alone our fire chief. So I'm all for protecting bodies and souls here.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Any other questions for our Public Works Director? Okay, thank you, Ted. Appreciate the
Yeah.
presentation. We'll move on now to business from the public. Individuals wishing to provide oral communication at the designated time must register in advance. I got the wrong script. Oh, here we go. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
Yes, there are.
And who's first?
My mistake. These people are speaking during the public hearing. So we have
Okay.
no general business from the public.
Okay. All right, thank you, Teresa. We'll go ahead then and move on to the consent calendar. People have an opportunity to review the consent calendar. Any questions or comments on the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair, move adoption of the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to move for adoption of the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Webb.
I'm sorry, I just have a question about what a log vein is. Is Ted still
There's Ted.
dead?
Yeah, these are like weirs that are put into the stream to divert the stream in another direction.
Are they
And they're
in fact
made up.
logs?
They're logs, and we can't use, that we have to use raw wood. So they drive those logs in, or the poles in, and then we attach trees to that, and then the material comes up and hits those and diverts Plimpton Creek out toward the river.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. And the guardrail installation is on a county road, right?
Yep.
Is there an algorithm for when ODOT or we put a guardrail on a road? How is it determined when a guardrail goes up?
Well, ODOT puts out accident reports, and they have a spreadsheet that shows exactly where accidents have occurred in Clatsop County. And so we can use that information to help us. And in those particular areas, that's why this guardrail is going in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb, and thank you, Ted. We've had a motion and a second. The consent calendar, all those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Motion approved. We'll go ahead and move on to the Commissioner Liaison reports and start with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I've been working on housing some more. Professor Shine of the Tallwood Institute tells me it's going to take a year to get a prototype of modular housing made of mass plywood panels. But hey, that's only a year. We're working on that. I'm working with AOC to look at, can we get a coastal housing specialist within AOC, housed within AOC. We're looking to see if we can get funding for that. Thanks to our county manager for his relentless devotion to process. The process continues. I think we can get there from here if we persevere. We're looking at a lot of intersecting arcs to see what we can do on a local and broader basis to address housing issues. And I'm dealing with my own housing issues now, moving our second home, and I'm really deeply appreciative to have the problems that that privilege affords me. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
Just a wonderful report from FAIR in regards to revenue. You know, the profits from FAIR for our fair board and for the properties, the fairgrounds, was kind of a bright and shiny moment, I think, after a year of having to be shut down in that facility. So just some wonderful highlights. I'll have some firm numbers, but I do know a little over 30,000 was earned on the concerts alone. That isn't in regards to gate fees or anything else. It was just the concerts alone. So that's just kind of a neat thing to see the world still turning. I attended the ODF update in regards to the HCP, the IMP, or the HCP, the FMP, and the IP. A lot of abbreviations there. So things are still moving. HCP is still moving through the NEPA process. ODF is submitting small changes to verbiage, and things are just moving forward in that aspects. I did ask a few pointed questions in regards to the economic outlook in regards to the counties, and the answer still defaults back to the previous October graphs that they presented to us 6 or 7 months prior to the HCP entering the NEPA process. And so still not getting any firm answers in regards to the economics and those concerns. So just moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb.
I have no report. I have been chronically ill for the last 3 weeks and going to as many Zoom meetings as I can, keeping a close watch on NOAA and its reconstruction of itself. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. We hope you get feeling better. Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of highlights since our last meeting. One is I had a visit by Gina Nickel, who's the executive director of AOC. Wonderful to meet and talk with her in person instead of just over Zoom. You know, you get to see her a lot through County College, but it's amazing how, you know, even though you're attending County College, you kind of skim the surface. And in person, talking with her, the amount of resources available to us for knowledge through AOC is pretty amazing. So that is, you know, it's a resource that I kind of knew was there, but since I've had that visit, now I know how to tap into it much better. So that was a really productive and wonderful visit with Gina Nickel. Secondly, I wanted to state that had a meeting with the Gerhardt City Manager, Chad Sweet, about the new fire station they're proposing there. He brought me in because I'm the commissioner for District 2. And then, you know, so it was a wonderful site visit, but what the really thing I pulled away from there, and I've had a discussion with county manager and Chair Quila, the opportunity to coordinate with the county for an EOC is paramount when we are looking at the different cities and the different municipalities trying to develop fire stations. You know, if they're working on their own resiliency projects, how we can dovetail that to the county resiliency. And I think there's a great opportunity for, you know, looking at auxiliary EOC or expanding our communications ability during those times. And not just tsunami. That location is in a extreme tsunami clear zone, but the things that we that'd be once in a generational, once in a lifetime event. But we have a lot of events every year, from fire to wind to storms. There's a lot of activity on the coast that require communication. And I think this is an opportunity as a county we can coordinate with those cities and increase our communications, have auxiliary EOC, and have a better coordinated effort communicating during those times. So that's something that we think as a board we can continue to pursue and continue to coordinate with each city. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I'm glad you mentioned Gina Nickel being in town. I enjoyed getting to visit with her as well. I'm going to be out for a few days. There is an OHA commissioners meeting on Friday. I see at 11. I will forward this to you, Commissioner Thompson, if you're available. I probably won't be able to be on that call. And other than that, I'll turn it over to our county manager.
Thank you, Chair Quilla, members of the board. Just want to let you know that Hannah Mathers from our office has been working on the new website look and feel. And so tomorrow she will be going live with the new website. And she wanted me to say that, but she also wanted to say that there'll be some ongoing improvements to it. But if you get on the county website tomorrow, you should see that new look and feel. She's done a yeoman's job working through that process. I also just wanted to remind the public that there's a lot of COVID information on the county website, and it's part of the COVID Public Information Hub. And so it has information about Clatsop County, but it also has all the links to all the OHA dashboards that they have been using. So there's a lot of information out there, and you can access it by the county website. And then just want to reiterate what Margot was speaking about during the work session today, and that is that Friday is statewide mask mandate for indoor public spaces. And so our staff is working to reinforce the communication that's coming from the state and being supportive of the efforts to gain compliance on that executive order. So and that's all that I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager. We'll move on to our business agenda. Actually, the public hearing is first, and this is on short-term rental moratorium ordinance 21-03 first public hearing on page 66. And I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen.
Good evening. Thank you, commissioners. The short-term rental item has been an issue that we've been discussing for several months. Most recently, we had 2 town hall meetings, one on July 9th and one on July 16th, to gather public comment about this proposed ordinance. We brought those comments to the board at your work session on August 3rd and made some additional adjustments to the ordinance based upon your feedback at that time. As currently drafted, Ordinance 2103 would apply to all areas of unincorporated Clatsop County and the urban growth boundary of the city of Gerhart. It would still allow the transfer of existing permits. However, it would prohibit the acceptance and review and issuance of new permits and review of new applications. Initially, the moratorium would apply for 120 days, and the reason for that is per ORS, we are restricted to 120 days initially because we have urbanizable land within the moratorium area. However, the board does have the extension at the 120-day point to extend that moratorium if you so choose. The recommendation of staff is to conduct the first reading, to open the public hearing, to take testimony, and then to continue this matter to August 25th, 2021. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of our Community Development Director? All right. Oh, Commissioner Toyo.
One question, Director Henriksen, the data for available land for housing, looking it up on the state level, it doesn't seem up to date. Is there current information, or is there real lifetime data on that?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think you're asking about what is the availability of vacant land to build new housing while the moratorium is in place. Is that correct?
No, it's in general, like by city, they have that statistic of how much land is available to develop.
Mhm.
And it just seems like, and we based a lot of, information on those statistics, and it doesn't seem like they're up to date. Is there current data on that?
The most current data that I'm aware of is our 2019 housing study that was completed in partnership with the county and the cities, and that did identify that there was a surplus of buildable land available. The problem that we're experiencing with the housing shortage is that we're missing certain price points of housing, and part of the site. Part of the reason cited in the study as well was that the possibility of people who are purchasing second homes or operating short-term rentals has possibly led to impacts that have exacerbated the housing crisis.
Okay. It just seems to me that they had I believe it was a 20-year arc that they took that data from. But I think the most significant change is probably the last 5+ years, and it might be impactful for their decision or for their data. Oops, I lost everybody for a minute there.
Yeah,
So,
you're back.
I'm back. Okay. Well, I was saying that the data, it would look like a 20-year window that they were using for their data.
that's correct.
But it looks like also the last, 5 to 7 years are very different metrics than the first, 14, 15, which might skew that data. So I don't think, personal opinion, I'm not a professional, but I would argue we don't have as much buildable land as the state believes we do.
Thank you. I'll make a note of that.
If we could, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Toyoka. I think there was another hand up there. Was it Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think Planning Director Henriksen, my sense of this moratorium is that it's an attempt, I want to say, to calm and soothe the waters in the situations that have developed around short-term rentals, at least in my neighborhood. So what I'm hoping is that as we look at this is a time for people to settle and calm as we go forward to discuss public policies and housing issues in Clatsop County. I trust that's your intention because that's what I see in what you've presented to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. We'll have some other opportunity for discussion. Let's go ahead and at this time open the public hearing. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
Yes.
Okay, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address for the record.
Nancy Chase.
Thank you and good evening. Nancy Chase, 79089 Tide Road. I have 3 rental properties in Clatsop County, and one of them is a short-term rental. And I'm in support of the moratorium. I agree with Commissioner Thompson. It's time to calm down. And I think part of the problem is we don't have any facts to work with. If you look at all the testimony, you really need a neutral party to determine how many rentals there are. I really was pleased with the workshop last week that staff is preparing some information on the complaints and has been directed to work with the sheriff as well on that. And I think what's missing is I keep hearing of a lot of new short-term rentals, but I haven't seen any facts. I'm hoping, I've talked to assessment and taxation, they don't have any data on that, but really no. Is there a big increase? If so, how much? I'd also ask that during the moratorium, how many applications have been pending or have been put on hold? And so you get more of a gauge of really what kind of problem there is. And I'm hoping that all that information, that fact finding, will be used by staff on their recommendations that will go forward to the workshop. But when I look at the timeline that's been proposed by staff, they're having the first draft done by the end of August. And I just don't see how the data that the board needs and that staff needs is going to be available by then. So I just would ask that you consider that timeline and make sure you have the facts to deal with. I think everybody would welcome that. It'd probably calm folks down to know that they're working with real numbers. Thank you.
Oh, you're muted, Commissioner Quila.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Chase. Anyone else signed up to speak?
Yes, Cameron Lewis.
Cameron, you're muted, and if you could just state your name and address for the record when you get unmuted.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cameron Lewis, 89883 Ocean Drive, Warrenton, and we're in Surf Pines. So I'm calling on behalf of Surf Pines right now. I have a couple of questions, and this is more understanding tax policy. Property tax, is there a differentiation in the county between property tax on short-term rentals versus just residential property? And if so, what is that difference?
If you can go ahead and continue your comments, and then maybe we'll have some answers at the end.
The second part of this is that with short-term rentals, we have several that have more than 10 person occupancy, one up to almost 20 person occupancy. And we have a lot of problems with speeding on our roads, a number of things that are damaging to our environment. And if you were a homeowner, you would be cited for that. It's difficult to identify exactly who those folks are if they're short-term renters. So if there's any insight there on how to successfully inform and cite the folks, we'd really like to hear from other people about how they approach that.
Okay. Thank you, Cam.
Absolutely.
Comments?
Next speaker is Claire Hassler.
Those are essentially, I agree with Cameron Lewis. We are in Surf Pines, and our concerns are that there's a lot of turnover of renters. They do not have a vested interest in the properties. We are full-time residents, and there is excessive turnover with no benefit to the community. Also, one of the concerns is safety and security. Oftentimes, our head of safety and security has been called out for issues in this community, and there's no additional fee that is included in short-term rental properties for dealing with that. And so we believe that there needs to be some responsibility to people who are not resident in their property, who are renting out homes as short-term rentals, to deal with some of these issues with respect to safety and security.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Can you state your address for the record, please?
89883 Ocean Drive.
Thank you.
Warrenton.
That's all the people who've signed up to speak.
Okay. Responses by staff, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Gail Henriksen. We did have a question about property tax. Did you catch that?
Yes, I did, and I am not qualified to answer the question about property tax. I can work to find an answer for you, but I don't have that answer right now off the top of my head.
Any other comments from staff? I see Commissioner Toyoka has raised his hand.
Just a question, if in neighborhoods such as Surf Pines, does HOAs, when they have that, would they supersede, or would they come after any other policy?
So my general understanding is that if there is an HOA and they do have rules that are more stringent than ours, we as the county staff would not enforce them. We would enforce our regulations, and it would be up to the homeowners association to enforce their own standards.
Not clear. That's not that clear.
Okay. Well-
That's actually very good. This is Claire Hatzler-Lewis speaking again, because we're getting conflicting information from the HOA with respect to who has final say on regulations regarding STRs.
Okay, thank you, Claire. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And are there any other questions? I saw we had Commissioner Toyoka had one. Anyone else have any questions for staff? Okay, what's the pleasure of the commission? Do we have any motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board conduct the first reading of Ordinance 21-03. This says open the public hearing and take testimony. You've done that. This says continue the matter to August 25, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board conduct the first reading of Ordinance 21-03 and continue to August 25th, 2021. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
We need to read the short title. Joanna?
Oh, yes. Yes, Joanna, are you going to read the title? Who's going to read the title?
I can go ahead and read that. Ordinance 2103, an ordinance implementing suspension of new short-term rental license processing under Clatsop County Code sections 5.12.010 through 5.12.120. And if I may just take a second, Assistant County Manager has responded to the question about taxes, and her response is that short-term rentals do not play a role in assessed values.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gail, and thank you, Monica, for that clarification. We will move on to the business agenda, which is considering an offer on county-owned property, page 76 of the packet. And Serpa Duas is with us to present the staff report. Serpa, can you hear me? Oh, there you go.
Waiting for the microphone. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. There it is. I see the green light now. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Staff receives offers from time to time on properties that are left over from prior auctions, and we received one in July on a property that is located in the Elsie area off of Morgan Lane. It is vacant land, and we have offered this for sale 2 times before and had no takers. The last minimum bid that we offered for was $5,000 cash, as is. We got in an offer on July 15th of $4,222, which is more than the property management policy of 80% after minimum bid. And it was received from Kathy Fisher and represented by her brother, Michael Cabagan. This vacant lot is 0.45 of an acre and has a real market value of $25,846, and the zoning is RA1. and it meets all the criteria that we require for an approval. So I'm seeking your approval to return this property back to the tax roll, and any proceeds after the cost will be distributed to the taxing districts. The cost that we foresee right now is the recording of the deed if approved. And that is all I have. If you have any questions for me, I'm ready to answer those.
Thank you, Super. I see that Commissioner Thompson has her hand up.
Thank you, sir. Well, Serpa, do we know why nobody else was interested? I mean, if it's worth as much as we think it is? I mean, it's great we have an office.
Yes, so it's kind of in a remote area, and I don't know if it has any infrastructure to it. Possibly not. It is in an area that is not supported by any sewer district. It may possibly have water down the street, but requires hookup fees, etc. So that could be one reason. It is not in a geohazard area, but it is in the county's landslide area. So certain prohibitions are there for the type of structures that may be put on there. I know that the prospective purchaser has done a lot of research on this before putting in the bid. And as far as the real market value, often we go in cycles of so many years, and once they are tax foreclosed and are not producing any taxes or revenue to the county, we do not assess those properties, so they go up and down with the real market value, and sometimes can go up and down considered with that.
So in accepting this offer, you see no injustice to county taxpayers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other questions? If not, we'll need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt the resolution in order by accepting the offer in the amount of $4,200, authorizing the chair to sign the deed.
Commissioner Webb? I think that's Commissioner Webb saying second. All right. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution in order by accepting the offer in the amount of $4,222 and authorizing the chair to sign the deed. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, Serpa.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Do we have any other items on the agenda? It doesn't look like it. Do we have anything for the good of the order? No. Well, if nothing else, we'll go and adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening.